From our studio in our office at the corner of 8th and Walton in Bentonville, Arkansas, welcome to Saturday Morning Meeting. Brought to you in part by Dun & Bradstreet Credibility Corp., the leading provider of credit and credibility solutions for businesses. Saturday Morning Meeting covers Walmart, Sam's Club, and the consumer product companies that are represented on the racks and shelves throughout the country and around the world. Our focus is on the insights, trends, and best practices to help you as a supplier grow your business with the world's largest retailer. I'm Andy Shook, and thanks for joining us. Today, we have a singular focus. The entire show is devoted to one topic: on-shelf availability. On-shelf availability, or OSA, may be the hottest subject in retail at the moment. Phantom inventory, missing in action merchandise, and empty shelves impact all of us: retailers, suppliers, and certainly customers. The best retailers know just what products their customers want, and they strive to have those items ready and handy when their customers want to buy. Of course, ultimately, it all comes down to the customer and the customer's satisfaction. But when a customer looks for and can't find a product, she's disappointed, frustrated, and sometimes even upset, anything but satisfied. OSA is really significant, $3 billion worth of significant, I understand. So it's not surprising that the topic has been covered and covered and covered again. Now, chances are there isn't a single retail publication or communication outlet that hasn't addressed the issue. In fact, OSA is so critical that general interest, large circulation publications that don't ordinarily deal with retail have covered this topic extensively. But what we have yet to see is a thought leaders brought together on camera to discuss what causes a product's absence from the shelf and to tell us how to solve that dilemma. Well, today we're changing that. Our entire program today is devoted to OSA in an effort to offer some real insight and give you some actionable steps. Today's guests come from the supplier, service provider, and academic landscapes. Leading the OSA conversation is Bill Akins, Senior Vice President of Business Innovation at Rockfish. Joining Bill are Dr. Matthew Waller, Chair of the Supply Chain Department at the Walton College of Business. John Succi, Director of Strategic Category Sales at the Nestle Retail Operations Center, and Mike Grain, Vice President of Collaboration at Crossmark. Their knowledge and insights on this topic are immeasurable, and their generosity in sharing that wisdom with all of us is most appreciated. Stay tuned. The Saturday Morning Meeting OSA special begins in just a moment.
I'm Bill Akins, and I run the Business Innovations team at Rockfish Interactive, and we've got a real unique opportunity today. The subject of OSA, on-shelf availability, is a very, very important topic to obviously the supplier community and the companies that actually have their products on the shelf at Walmart. It's almost impossible to read a story about Walmart today and not see that little acronym dropped in on it. And so as a part of us diving into the topic, we've got a very unique collaboration between academia, the Walmart supplier community, and the retail service sector. And so quickly, gentlemen, if you'll just maybe introduce yourselves real fast and allow us to understand your background as it relates to the topic of OSA.
Sure. My name is Matt Waller. I'm a professor in supply chain management in the Sam M. Walton College of Business and also chair of the department. And I've been doing research on retail supply chain management for about 20 years, actually since I arrived here in 1994, and in particular on-shelf availability since about 2002.
Hi, Bill, and I'm John Succi. I'm the Director of Strategic Category Sales for Nestle Retail Operations Center. I've been in the business for 24 years, the last 13 years here in Northwest Arkansas, and my primary focus is really ensuring that we have proper retail execution of Nestle items in Walmart stores.
And Bill, my name is Mike Grain. I'm the Vice President of Collaboration for Crossmark. I'm responsible for the Center for Collaboration for Crossmark, but I've actually have almost 30 years in the industry working with Walmart. I started out with 25 years with Procter & Gamble in the very early days, calling on P&G and Walmart, and been involved with things like Retail Link, et cetera. And then I went over to the Walmart side. I actually ran their RFID program and was responsible for some things there, supplier-facing things, including the supplier portal allowing retail coverage, I'm sure which will come up as part of this topic today. And now I'm over at Crossmark and really trying to create a model where suppliers and retailers can work together more effectively to invent the future. So very, very passionate about this topic.
Fantastic. So we've got a very, very rounded viewpoint of this topic. And when you hear the statistic that I think it's OSA is literally a $3 billion opportunity for Walmart, and when you've got those kinds of gaps at the shelf happening, that's something we need to pay attention to. So certainly we'll appreciate each of your perspective on it. So let's just really dive in here. So Mike, maybe we'll start with you. Let's define OSA. I mean, truly, what is it? How does it vary from in-stock as a measurement? Maybe you can just lay the foundation out for us today.
Well, that's a great first question because it's actually a pretty misunderstood question. So on-shelf availability is basically the shopper or the customer's perspective of, is that product available for me to purchase? Is it available at the store? Is it available on the shelf? If it's an online, is it available for me to pick up if I've ordered, et cetera? So it really comes from the customer, the end customer, if you will. So that's the first thing of what it is. It varies differently than a lot of people think about as a measurement called in-stock. In-stock is typically measurement as, hey, I think it's in the building somewhere. It is in the building or not in the building. It's a much different thing if it's in the building, in the back room, for example, and not on the shelf. So on-shelf availability is a much different measurement than in-stock.
Perfect. So, John, I mean, obviously running a lot of the retail service teams that's out there. Can you define it? I mean, is there a way to measure it? Is there a gold standard? Are you pulling reports out of Retail Link? Maybe explain that a little bit. What that
so
looks like.
there's not a particular gold standard because, again, and just even to go back, for a company like us, it's really the most important thing we do. Because if you think about it, if a consumer comes into a store looking for a product, for a Nestle product in store, and they can't find it, we failed them. So it is a very important thing, but it's not something that there's a particular gold standard. There's several different ways that companies will look at. One of the things that we do at Nestle is we have some algorithms that we put into place where we will look at an expected sales rate by item by store based on the velocity of that item. And we'll compare that, and if an item is not selling to that expected rate, we'll alert that to our store. So we identify that that's a potential out-of-stock issue. Other suppliers will use store audits, visual out of stock. So there's a multitude of ways that we'll look at that, but there's no one set standard form.
Okay, so there's lots of players that are involved in the whole OSA process. Yeah, I doubt I will find anybody in the town of Bentonville that has a business card that says OSA or OSA responsibilities on it. So you've got the role of the Walmart associate, you've got the role of the actual supplier, then you've got the role of the retail coverage company, such as Crossmark, to actually, rising tides raise all ships here in the role of OSA. So maybe can you define what those roles and responsibilities are in each of those realms?
For the retailer, for Walmart, it starts with planning and execution. Okay. So for example, the modular has to be planned. How much space is needed, for example. But then it has to be executed in the store. Same with replenishment. The replenishment parameters, what replenishment process is going to be used, when our replenishment is going to be sent. Not only does it have to be planned, it has to be executed.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and really from a supplier standpoint, as you said, it's not one person's job, but it's really everyone's job. So everyone on a supplier team, whether it's the category teams, the account teams, as you said, Matt, working with Walmart to make sure the modulars are correct, all the way to supply chain to ensure that, again, the product that's ordered is delivered on time, the forecasts are accurate, and then kind of that last 100 feet with the retail team where we're working at the store level, kind of boots on the street, so to speak, where we're working store by store to make sure that, again, OSA is taking place at store level.
Gotcha.
I think from the retail coverage aspect, I think companies like Crossmark, one of the things that we do is work very, very closely with our clients, our supplier partners, and the Walmart associates both. And we play a pretty valuable role, which is leveraging data and leveraging actually arms and legs in the store to collaboratively work with the store associates. I mean, one thing for sure is Walmart has got a tremendous model and there's no way they can get everything done. Right. So the supplier companies are really working very closely with the department managers, the store managers to execute working, and we'll talk a little bit later probably about the Spark tool, but to leverage the capability and tools that they've got to make sure they can do everything they can to make sure products are on the shelf.
Perfect. So, I mean, each of these roles, none can exist in a vacuum. I mean, they have to be working in collaboration together. And so Matt, picking up on what you were talking about with the Walmart Associate piece, I mean, what are reasons why product is not on the shelf in the first place? I mean, I think it's easy to make the first assumption of, oh, well, there's not enough associates to actually stock it in there, but there's obviously much more to the picture here. So
I agree, yeah. So the number of associates may make a difference, but again, it's making sure the plans are that they corroborate one another. For example, in a replenishment system, you have a safety stock setting. So the safety stock is the expected number of units on hand when the replenishment arrives and is available for use. So when the replenishment actually gets to the shelf, how much is on the shelf before you put the replenishment on the shelf? That's what the actual safety stock is. That's the definition of safety stock. Well, a lot of times, if, for example, let's suppose a store starts stocking out more. One reaction is to increase safety stock. Well, if you increase safety stock, then the chances of the case not fitting on the shelf go up, and therefore you have to take that case to the back room, which increases labor and reduces the probability that it will get on there at the right time. This is an example of how planning, you can't just plan a good modular, you can't just plan replenishment well and forecasting. They have to be done in corroboration with one another.
Perfect. Well, I think we've laid a nice foundation for what this looks like. We'll take a quick break and come back and pick up the puzzle on what that looks like from a technological standpoint. And then let's talk about some practical things that suppliers can actually go back to their desk and do immediately. So we'll be right back. Welcome back to Saturday Morning Meeting as we're tackling the topic of on-shelf availability today. So we've talked about the roles of people. We've talked about the different types of roles between the Walmart associate, the supplier, and the retail coverage company. Mike, what about the role of technology? So Walmart released Spark last fall. Maybe you can talk a little bit about the role that now technology is also playing in helping to solve OSA and hit that $3 billion opportunity.
Yeah. So great question. So the supplier portal allowing retail coverage tool was really put in place, I believe, by Walmart as an initiative to recognize that suppliers were already in the store. Sure. They were already trying to really collaboratively work with the store management and department managers to do what the part they could do to drive on-shelf availability. So it was really allowing a training platform, building the trust between those, but a technology platform that actually created a bring your own device. So most of those representatives or suppliers are coming in with their own device anyway, and actually give them online access to the store's system that gives them the ability to do things like scan information, scan products, allow them to look up very critical inventory information for those products, print shelf labels, which is very, very important to make sure the modulars have integrity, and basically work very effectively and free up those particular associates to do the work that they were intended to do while letting the department managers and the store managers do what they tried to do.
So allowing people to do best what they're trained to do. Absolutely. And what they should be doing.
Absolutely.
And,
as an added benefit, people who are not necessarily doing work in stores all the time, like John's supplier teams, et cetera, if they're out there covering stores and doing store visits, et cetera, it's an incredible tool because literally you've got a device in your hand that allows you to look at inventory levels, look at when we've got product in transit coming from distribution centers, allow us to say when the last time that product was sold, just an incredible wealth of information at the palm of your hand. And the real good thing is it's real-time information versus being 24 or 48 hours old.
Exactly. So, perfect. So, Matt, we talked about issues where a product may not be actually on the shelf, but what about when it's actually not in the store itself? What are the supply chain issues behind that?
There are many. One is that you could have phantom inventory. For example, phantom inventory is when the perpetual inventory system says there's inventory in the store and there isn't. Well, if the perpetual inventory is saying there's an amount of inventory that's higher than the reorder point, then the reorder system won't even trigger an order. So. And then that can happen all the way to the DC. So if enough stores aren't tripping orders, the DC might not even trip an order. Right. But the other thing that can happen is that the lead time can be too long. Sometimes suppliers ship things really late to the DC and they don't get there in time to get to the store on time. Sometimes demand spikes. Sometimes there's errors in the item file so that it says there's more inventory maybe in a case pack than there actually is. These kinds of things happen throughout the supply chain, and it's both planning and execution again, not just at the store, but throughout the supply chain.
Great. So we've addressed talking about issues on the shelf, product potentially not even being in the store. Let's be prescriptive and very, very actionable at this point. I'm a supplier. I'm sitting at my desk. I'm watching this show live or I'm watching this stream months later. What can I go do right now if I'm a supplier to actually begin tackling the topic of OSA?
Well, I think really, Bill, the key part on this is that it's not one person's job. It's really everybody's job to drive OSA. It's such an important thing for suppliers, for Walmart. So that's the first step, I would say. And really, it starts with the category team. So if we can focus on demand-based modulars that have the proper holding power for high-velocity items, that's the first step in the process to make sure that we have product on the shelf for the consumers.
For supply chain teams, I would say, make sure the item file information is correct. I mean, if you're dealing with data that is erroneous, then no matter how much planning you do, you're not going to be able to execute well. That's got to be done first. But second of all, you've got to make sure that, as a supplier, you've got to make sure that you get product to the distribution center on time and in the right quantity. And this fails more than you would expect. And I think of, there's carriers out there. We talk about collaboration between the retailer and the supplier, but we often forget there's carriers out there to collaborate with. When you look at the truckload industry, there's primarily a lot of small players that might be hard to collaborate with. But there's a few big players like J.B. Hunt, for example. And J.B. Hunt has an expertise in things like operational excellence, which is similar to Six Sigma. And you could collaborate with a carrier like that to try to improve your execution of shipments to the DC, and that would go a long way.
And then I think the key is that last 100 feet. So when you actually get down to the store levels, I would say to suppliers, evaluate what your store coverage, whether you have direct reps, you have a third-party agency as well, but they can be out there for you, ensuring you have modular integrity, promotional compliance. They're attacking those OSA issues store by store every day. And also making sure they have the right tools so they're effective when they're in store and they're not taking time away from Walmart associates.
I think the big thing I would try and challenge everybody is learn everything you can about how product flows from a manufacturer all the way through a supply chain to a store. If you recognize how hard that is, it's amazing, Matt, that we're as in stock as we are. Yes. When you start thinking about all the things that have to go absolutely right for a product to be on the shelf. A big one is, at the end of the day, what tools can we put out there that alert us so we don't have to necessarily be there to see the out of stock? There is OSA alerting that things like Atlas and Shiloh and RSI use to work with supplier teams like Nestle to make people aware that it looks like we normally sell 5 of this and we just stopped selling it. Let's get an alert out there. And we also got, when you have slower moving items, you've got great tools out there like Field Agent that literally put the ability to put eyes and ears in the stores around the United States at very efficient cost and then get that back to the retail coverage companies to actually fix the problem.
Now, one thing I'd like to interject here, you mentioned really understanding the process, and I think that is a key takeaway. There's a famous article that was in Harvard Business Review in 1992. I still remember it. It's called Staple Yourself to an Order. I would recommend I would recommend reading that article because this idea of understanding the process is critical.
Right. Yeah, and I would say, Mike, kind of playing off of what you said as well, too, is we have a great opportunity with the supplier portal app. Again, that's technology in a rep's hands while they're in the store that matches up exactly to what the Walmart associate is seeing. So again, utilizing that tool, understanding it, getting trained on the functionality. So again, we can really make a difference while we're in store at that point.
I think the last one that I'd want to mention is, Matt mentioned phantom inventory. Phantom inventory is a very real situation. And it's inventory that's not accounted for. It's usually when it's phantom, it says you've got 10, but you really don't have 2, or don't have any product in the store. So you don't sell any because you don't have any, and you don't order any because it thinks you've got some. So putting tools in place to really address that phantom inventory and working very collaboratively with the department managers to an accurate counting and try and get that readjustment that lets that replenishment process begin again. So it's stores, retail is detail. So there's a tremendous amount of detail activity that goes in there, but it's really important for people to be in touch with those details.
Well, this is not about to be a stagnant topic anytime soon. So, gentlemen, thank you for your perspectives. I hope you're willing to come back because it will look different 12 months from now as it looks today. But appreciate all your different perspectives. And with that, Saturday morning meeting, we'll be right back.